You are watching and listening to Now Steaming. This is the podcast where we serve fresh hot takes from the millennial Chinoy perspective. My name is Stancy, and I'm joined as always by my co-hosts. They are the co-creators of So Asian Comics, Kimberly Mas and Cedric Cheng. And I think both Kim and Ced are really excited about this week's episode because we're talking to a fellow millennial na Chinoy na artist, so someone whose work is really right up your alley.
Right. I'm so excited as well. I believe we've already met before in one of the Comic Cons, and right now it's just an honor to actually interview. Well, I think I should say it myself, Rob Cham, here in the podcast. So hopefully we get to know a little bit more about Rob behind the scenes or who he really is and his Chinoy background and everything else.
Yeah, we'll get to talking about that in a bit. Of course, Rob is one of the many Chinoys featured in the documentary Chinese by Blood, Filipino by Heart, produced by Chinoy TV and directed by Emmy Award-winning filmmaker Mike Carandang. Of course, the three of us are part of that as well, and you can hear all of our takes throughout the 10-episode series, which airs on CNN Philippines. It's also live streamed on cnnphilippines.com Sunday nights at 8 p.m. And you can catch the replay over on the Facebook page of Chinoy TV every Wednesday. So that's when they upload those episodes if you want to hear from us. But yeah, this episode's probably a bit longer, a bit more unfiltered in terms of like the things that we are allowed to say on the documentary. So let's bring in our guest who I'm sure has a lot of thoughts about growing up Chinoy and particularly not being a Manila-based Chinoy. It's a perspective that we don't get a lot of here on the podcast. Let's give him a proper introduction. He's the art director of Linya Linya. He's also a web designer, a teacher, a storyboard artist, a colorist, a caricature artist. In my book, he's someone you'd probably call a slashy because I'm damning slash in his occupations. And he's also part of the core team of Unnamed, which is a Southeast Asian comics collective. Let's formally welcome to the podcast, Rob Cham. How's it going, Rob?
Hey everyone. Hi.
Yeah, really nice to have you on the podcast. This is something that, or an interview now we've been trying to nail down for quite a bit because yung skeds natin, they're all over the place. All of us being creative. So I'm really happy now we were able to sit down and finally have some time to just get to know one another.
I'm excited. I have not listened to an episode of this yet. This is the first I've heard of Now Steaming when Stan brought it up. So I'm unfamiliar with the format and all of this. But now I'll have to start listening.
No, don't worry about it. I mean, like every time someone tells us, now, you know what, we've never heard of your show, that's fine. Because like, if somebody actually said, you know what, I've heard about you, ayun, dun kami magkakaroon ng red flags. But, oh, okay.
So what did you actually hear?
What did you actually hear, right? So it's nice that you're actually coming in fresh. So I'm going to start, I guess, with talking about how Rob and my circles have intersected over the years, because like I remember having followed you on social media years ago, and I think it was because of the local wrestling scene. Like for some reason, when the local wrestling scene took off, puro mga artists yung mga unang nagpa-follow sa amin, and you were one of the first people who took notice of what we were doing.
Yeah, like I remember how, what was that school in Makati that you guys performed at?
I Academy.
Yeah, I know there was the Makati Cinema Square days, but then that's the days that I came in. Like around 4 years ago that I started watching. Are we allowed to say their name? Because
yeah, we are.
Yeah. Okay. All right. PWR. Yeah. So that's how I started. Like that's how I first learned about Stan C, and then got to know everyone else in that scene because like everyone's friendly and everyone sports this interesting thing of PWR, like
right?
Wrestling.
Yeah. Sobrang cool.
Nakakatuwa na, yung these circles were actually in.
I also talked to Stan a bit about wrestling since you did PWR, and I'm also a wrestling fan, but not so much anymore right now. So it's just really crazy how small the Chinoy circle is. Plus, if you have all these interests, sobrang ano talaga,
you're bound to bump into each other.
You're bound to meet eventually. So it's just amazing.
Yeah. I mean, besides Stan, I actually met the two of you.
Right.
At a comic. Yeah. When you guys were selling. Yeah, when you guys were selling So Asian Comics, and I remember reading it after buying a copy and then going back and telling you guys, "Yo, I hope you guys make more."
Like we were flattered and honored. Oh my gosh, it's the Rob Cham visiting our booth.
Yeah,
Remember
I
that,
was
Kim?
I remember that moment. It was that kind of moment where wherein like Rob like goes to our booth and we're like, oh, I don't think he's gonna come here. He's not gonna be interested in these stuff. And when he actually came over, we were like, oh my god, it's Rob Cham. We have to get a photo. So yeah, we did, and it was actually the photo that we actually put out every time we have like interviews or like media stuff.
Like,
Like, hey, we actually had a photo with Rob Cham.
we
So
had that moment now, we're not worthy. We're not worthy.
yeah, because we were really new back then, so it was really nice to have like a fellow Chinoy who appreciates our work. So sobrang cool lang.
How did it feel when you first came across So Asian comics? Like from your perspective as a Chinoy artist, now, oh, these are people who are actually creating this art that probably reflected some of the experiences that you grew up having.
The second part, I'm not so sure about, like the experiences. Because for example, like my grandparents passed away when I was young, so I couldn't relate to that part. Um, it's more, yeah, there is certain stuff that I picked up that I only knew because, yeah, I was part of the Chinoy community in that comic, and then some of these problems are not talked about anywhere else. That's it. Like I was happy to see that kind of experience actually being shared in a comic. Like I would also make autobio comics when I was starting out, but I never really incorporated any of my Chinoyness because it never really played a factor.
Yeah, no, no,
100%.
it's okay. So like
Yeah.
I noticed that there's a bit of hesitation,
Right.
and I just want to say na safe space naman to na you don't have to like say na, oh yeah, I feel as Chinoy as you or whatever. Like to me at least, I don't care about that. I think there's a prevailing sense in the larger Manila Chinoy community na you have to be a certain way to be considered Chinoy, and I just want to break that and say now we don't encourage that on the podcast. So just so you feel more comfortable, Rob. Like it doesn't matter to us how Chinoy you supposedly are. I think your experience is as authentic as the rest of ours. So that's what I kind of want to get into actually, because you were telling me via chat before we started na you grew up in Baguio and that you weren't as in touch with the stereotypical Chinoy lived experience as everybody else. So can you paint a picture for us, please?
So growing up, I knew I was Chinese from when I was born. Kidding.
Same.
Anyway. Okay. So growing up, I was very frustrated to learn that I had to go to two different schools, and everyone else just had afternoon or morning school, right? So I went to the morning class for English and afternoon class for Chinese. I'm sure that's kind of what happens here, but it's integrated that it's like English, Chinese, same school. Here I had to go from one school to the other and then just kept doing the same amount of homework because the Chinese class would also be English and Chinese. I guess my parents just didn't like the English education of the Chinese school.
Okay.
So yeah, I thought that this was normal to have to work twice as hard since I was a kid. And yeah, the community was pretty much everyone's children went to the same schools. Like majority of the Chinese people I knew, the Chinoy community in Baguio is very close knit. A lot of them own hotels and businesses, that kind of deal. So since it was small, my dad pretty much was. He moved there in the '70s from Manila, made friends with the community. I didn't really like feel as much as of a division. I remember that being in the docu where Stan was mentioning how when they went to that school, it felt like you that was the whole experience, right? Where the Chinese people you knew were just at school, and then that was the whole thing where it's like everyone happens to be kind of like same-ish. But for me, it was like I was exposed to a lot more, I guess, a bit different kind of thing where there wasn't purely Chinese students at my school. Like we were just maybe two in a class, three in a class, like that. It was a small school, and yeah, I only ever got to interact with the Chinese community at birthday parties where they threw banquets or they throw like a party at Baguio Country Club for a 90-year-old grandpa,
Yeah.
like or an anniversary, that kind of deal. But there wasn't any Chinatown that I knew of. There wasn't any like place that we all hung out. I wasn't really that close with my Chinese classmates. or the Chinese community. So I kind of just went on with my own interests, where it was making art and Magic the Gathering,
Well, I can relate.
geeky video game stuff. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I can relate. I think we pretty much have the same upbringing as well because despite being Chinese racially, I also wasn't close with the culture.
I was gonna ask about whether you felt different. Kasi, di ba sabi mo, there were like 2 or 3 Chinese kids lang in your class and you didn't really connect with the other Chinese kids. So ano yun, like, did you see yourself as different from them, or was that something that even entered your consciousness as a kid?
Like, as a kid, I would just get made fun of for like having smaller eyes than everyone else, like usual bullying stuff. But yeah, that stuff kind of passes. So um, yeah, it just didn't click, I guess. Like, I didn't get along with them, not because of any lack of effort. It's just, you just make friends with the friends that you make with. But for me, I didn't really make any friends either.
Oh,
Growing up, like, with Filipinos or Chinoys. So yeah.
Totally understand that. Like for me as an artist as well, like growing up here in Manila in an all-girls school where you have like certain standards, certain upbringing. Like it was difficult for me to actually make friends when I was younger because you were a little different. Like I liked certain things, I like certain genres that the usual
yeah.
econs wouldn't like or the all girls wouldn't like. So it was I can totally relate to that. But going back to your story about the Baguio community, the Baguio Chinoy community rather, like was it a factor for your dad or probably like your family to like have Chinoy friends all the time? Or was it they were really chill about it? Like, okay lang na I don't have any Chinoy friends. Like, you could just make friends with whoever you want.
Yeah, they never brought that up.
Really? Oh, that's
Yeah,
so
like,
cool.
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I don't know, like, the friends that my dad had were mostly
Mhm.
Pinoy or half Chinese. But yeah, that's because it isn't a big knit community. And my dad was a banker in Baguio, and that's how he made a lot of his clients and a lot of friends there, and helped a lot of people get funding for their businesses. So I think that's how, like, he became known in the community as like reliable and all that. So yeah, and then widespread of friends. And I, there's a preference with you
Yeah,
guys.
there kind of
Yeah.
is. Oh,
Yeah, there is.
we've talked about this before kaming tatlo na growing up, lalo na when we went to college, so hindi na Chinese school, di ba? Parang, oh, you have a Chinese friend? Oh, what's their business? What's their
It's
last
probably just
name?
us,
Kilala ba
I guess.
natin?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's very strange hearing that from you na parang, you did grow up in a Chinoy household, but that wasn't considered important. Na parang, oh, it's okay if your friends aren't Chinese or whatever. So like, walang ganun sa'yo? You never had that experience na, oh, you have to find a nice Chinese girl, ha? Or, oh, these friends, they're, ano ba? Are any of them Chinese or any of that? Walang ganun?
There'd be hints of it where,
Okay.
like, if I had interest in a girl and then I tell my parents about it, they ask Chinese ba sila. But other than that, I didn't really feel like there was a push to be just with your own kind, because, like, I guess there wasn't much, and the people that we knew, that's already
Yeah.
the people that we knew. So it wasn't, I guess, as widespread as you guys, where you have so many different Chinoys everywhere that you could run into that. Whereas mine, it was like, we already know everyone.
Right.
Okay, here's the thing. A curious question as well, because as for me, I went to an art school. Just a little background. Like I went to art school, and then obviously there were not a lot of Chinoys there. So my parents would always send me to like um, family events, or probably like this study tour full of different Chinoys. Like there's this study tour in downtown. It's called I don't know what you call it in English, but it's in Liberty Hall. Na you get to go to Taiwan. So there are all like these different people from the provinces going there just to find a
Mate.
significant other. Yeah, or a mate. Yeah. So was there ever a point that your dad actually or your family members actually told you that maybe you should go to Manila so you can have more Chinese friends or you can find a Chinese mate? Was there ever a point like that? Since wala masyado sa
No.
Baguio. Never.
No, this is all freaky to me. What the hell? What the fuck?
I love it. I love
What
the
is
reaction.
this? What
Okay,
kind of?
it's just us. It's
It's
just
just us.
Why are people doing this to their children? What?
I would ask the same thing, you know.
Why?
Teka lang, is this legitimately the first you hear of this shit?
Like, I
feel
didn't know they would send you guys to go out for matchmaking. There was like, we would joke that there's arranged marriages and stuff, but this is like fucking weird, man. Like, oh, go to this retreat and then, oh, find a nice boy there. And it's like, that's like, you know
It
how
happens.
like
It-
usually it should be like the parents are afraid to put their kids in a soiree situation.
Mm-hmm.
Here it's like, go to a village, find a man. It's like,
No, in this case, it's like go to Taiwan and find a
Yeah,
man or
yeah.
whatever. Diba? Like, Kim, legit nangyari yun sa'yo, diba? Like, that's the experience
Legit
that you got talked
nangyari
into
yun.
going. Yeah.
Exactly, because I think art school, diba, yung sinabi ko, okay, mom, dad, there's just like one or two of my classmates that are Chinese, and they're either taken or they're weird or whatever, right? So my mom's like, oh, okay, I know the solution. Sige, let's bring you to Taiwan. And I actually legit, I thought it was a study tour, and when I got there, oh man, it's a huge scam.
It's
It's
a
not a
love boat.
study tour. It's not a study tour.
it's
I mean,
Love Island, but
yeah.
For Chinoys.
Nice way of putting it, but it was like that. It was really like that. There was also an age limit, like only 18 to 32
Yeah.
can
Oh yeah, because
attend
they give
this.
up on the 33 and above.
Yeah, the 33 na ba? Bahala ka na, parang gano'n. True.
Wala ka pang jowa at 33, wala ka ng pag-asa.
Oh man.
Ah shit,
Let's-
I have 2 years left. Fuck.
Let's bring it back to you, Rob, and your lived experience, because I wanna know how exposed you were to like the Chinese culture. Because we laugh about it, diba, with regard to, for example, the comics that said and Kim produce, or
Mhm.
when we talk about yung mga customs and traditions that we grew up around. So like for you, did you also grow up, say, wearing red kapag birthday, wearing white at funerals, all of that stuff?
I mostly rely on my sisters and my parents to tell me if I should wear something at a birthday, a wedding, a funeral, that kind of thing. But yeah, I didn't keep track at all, so I have no idea. Even now, I'm asking my sisters, and they have no idea either. I know we're not supposed to wear black at parties,
Yeah, for the
yeah.
most part. Oh.
and then no red on birthdays, right? Or
No,
red on birthdays.
definitely wear red on
Definitely.
Definitely wear red
Yes
on
to red
birthdays.
on birthdays.
All right. See,
So like,
this is what I
hindi
mean.
ka rin
Like,
nagtatyam hue, like with the incense and all that, or
we do that
Uh,
on death anniversaries of my grandparents, but
okay, yeah.
yeah, it's mostly it was my dad doing that stuff and then directing us. I never really got to know why or how or what the reasoning was or what the deal was.
Bakit ganun? Like, did you ever ask him why he never passed it on to you, or why he never taught you these nuances?
No, like we just did it, and then I didn't know it was supposed to be passed down to me. So yeah, still have no idea how to do any of this. And also, my dad passed away already, so like I,
It's
I have
okay.
I have no idea. But
Like-
I'm learning on the like as I go along. My sisters usually are the ones reminding me of, okay, you have to do this on this day, that kind of thing.
It's all right. Like usually naman when I do ask my parents why do we do this, they'll just say because it's tradition. That's that. No explanation.
No,
Yeah,
but it's not about
that's
the
the
asking
confusing
why.
thing.
Yeah.
It's not about the
Yeah.
asking why. I think yung older generation, yung mas gusto, yung mas importante sa kanila is naipasa yon to the younger generation, that your parents were able to teach you that, or that you were able to learn it from them. So I guess from someone like me, like my dad kasi is really hung up on making sure that we learn these things and that we understand and that we pass them on. So I guess to me, whenever a fellow Chinoy comes along and hindi sila familiar with these things, I always am very curious kung bakit ganun. So
yeah,
like,
likewise.
hindi siya napagkwentuhan, or it's not just something you guys talked about at home?
Yeah, but then they don't really explain why, right? They say because it's tradition. And then it feels like when you ask why, they think you're trying to get out of it when you're just trying to understand it.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. That's
Yeah.
fair.
Yeah. So, yeah, and we would just do, and then when I ask why, it would be like it's tradition, or this, so it goes up to heaven, and then like you ask more of the history, and they don't know either. So maybe it's just it's tradition. Just do it.
Well,
So on the subject of traditions, one Chinese tradition alam kong like a lot of Filipinos na aren't even Chinese definitely practices Ghost Month. Like we're recording this podcast during Ghost Month. So
Right.
how about you, Rob? Like as somebody who's now getting into your own businesses, is that something you also observe? Because one of my other friends in entertainment, Patty Chu, who's not Chinese but has a Chinese stage name, totally practices Ghost Month. So
Mm.
like that totally cracks me up. Shout out to Patty Chu. So how about you, Rob? Is that something that you are familiar with?
It's something that I had to reckon with my other jobs, where we kept trying to get clients for when I was working as a web designer, as an art director, and then when it's a Chinese client, it's always nothing on Ghost Month. So it's just like, oh great, our payment's getting delayed. But
Yeah.
that's the most I've experienced of it. I didn't know anything about like don't I still don't know anything about Ghost Month.
Okay.
Yeah. Like right now, what are the do's and don'ts? I know we're not supposed to start businesses
Yeah.
or make car purchases, and like you don't
Nothing
do that
big.
every month, naman eh. So like
Right.
I'm good.
Yeah, like nothing big. Like don't sign a
Yeah.
contract, don't get married,
Yeah.
don't buy a house, don't buy a car, don't start a new
Yeah.
job.
Just don't do anything big, in short.
Basically,
Anything
It's
don't do
okay.
life
anything big.
changing, I think. Yeah.
It's okay, Rob. Like, I'm not even fully familiar with it either, so I can relate to your plight.
So right, it's Ghost Month because that's when the ghosts come out, and they may haunt the things that you invest in. That kind of deal. I learned
Yeah,
that from Google.
parang
I
ganun.
didn't
Oh.
learn that from anyone else. Like I ask my folks, they don't tell me shit. And when I got Google, that's when it tells me, oh, okay, it's because people believe that the ghosts are up at this particular month.
Oh,
Ugh.
man.
Did it ever frustrate you though na parang your parents ever talk to you about it?
It's usually a brick wall. Like I remember asking about these things, and then it's either it's tradition or that's just the way Chinese people are supposed to be. Is one thing that I remember sticking with me when I asked about. I think I wanted to get a tattoo, and then my dad was disapproving of it, and then
Yeah.
uh, it doesn't say anything in the traditions, and like there's the whole boomer idea that tattoos are related to criminals. I can understand that, but then to put race into it, nah, that's not how Chinese people are. It's
Yeah.
like we should be anything we want, despite what race we are. Like,
Well, speaking of being anything we want,
yeah.
I also wanted to ask that since you're in a traditionally non-Chinese profession as well, like being an artist, how was it like? Like when you decided that you wanted to be an artist and then you told your folks about it, was there any resistance? That no, nothing. Okay.
Nothing. Like my parents were very supportive from a
Wow.
young age. They saw that I really like drawing. They got me into art classes. They bought me books. They had me mentor under another artist, another Chinese artist, Norman Tan. He was also based in Baguio. And then, yeah, that's where I learned how to do oils. I learned how to do traditional watercolor, traditional ink stuff. And then when it came to picking out colleges, I got into UP, Ateneo, La Salle, and yeah, I thought go for the degree because like opportunities when you graduate. I was the one who pushed for a fail safe. Like my parents were surprised; they thought I was going to go to UP and take up fine arts.
Where'd you go? And what course did you take?
I took up management in Ateneo, and wow, that is the most Chinese course that you could have
I
picked.
know.
Yeah.
What the
I was gonna say,
Yeah,
why?
yeah, when I got there, I saw that most of my batchmates were Chinese, and I was like, huh.
Oh.
Bro, di lang
Okay.
Chinese. It's like the most savior
It's-
slash Ika course.
Yeah, and then that was so confusing to me because everyone was lumping me with like, oh, are you from Savior too? And I had no idea what Savior was.
He's like, what is this?
what is Savior?
Love it.
I don't know those people. Yeah, and I remember that I wanted to at least get some kind of experience with learning Chinese. So when I applied for foreign language as Chinese, they thought I was trying to coast by easy, and they put me on advanced, and I didn't know shit. Yeah. So I was like, I genuinely don't know the language, and the teacher was really frustrated with me. I really tried to learn. And the rest of the class were also just like Savior Ika people trying to coast by. I didn't try. I wanted to genuinely.
Oh, sila yung mga patalo eh. Tinan mo, si Rob Cham tuloy, di natuto ng Chinese.
You fit right in though. You fit right in the stereotype.
Englishero ka kasi.
Yeah. Even in Baguio, that's weird. Where I speak English, and like not
Mhm.
everyone sounds like this. So, yeah, yeah. So that's also another weird thing where everyone thinks I'm from here because of how I speak. I'm like my sisters don't sound like this. They sound like, yeah, people who grew up
Yeah,
in Baguio.
yeah, I guess it's probably because of the things you were exposed to as
Yeah.
well. Like if you're exposed to like the arts, comics, and all of that, you're more inclined. I mean, I don't know. That's
No, that's
just
that's
how I see
true.
it.
I think based from experience as well,
May punto
because
yun. Oh.
yeah,
Mm.
because for someone like me as well, like all of my siblings like different things, you know, Gundam, anime, and they all. And as for me, naman, I was like the weird kid in the family, or even in high school and elementary. Like, I would listen to Joy Division, New Order, Tears for Fears, and all that. Well, everybody else was like Akon and Fergie, right? So,
Fergie's awesome. How dare you?
Yeah. I'm not gonna take a shit on Fergie or
Yeah.
Akon. Aba.
Fergalicious definition mixing those. Okay,
Or
I memorized the rap. Anyway, moving on.
yeah, moving on, moving on. Kim, you had a follow up to something that Rob said earlier.
Oh man, no, I just got so caught up with the Ateneo story because
Sige, sige, sige.
it was the most cliche thing that the savior Ikan would do. But yeah,
Yeah, I had no idea.
I seriously, I was
that
expecting
was
that
fun.
you took up a fine arts course nga in UP because that was the thing. Anyways, okay, here I remember the question. Was there a point that like you were telling your parents, okay, I got into LaSalle, I got into UP, and these are the courses na I'm supposed to go into. But then, was there a point that your parents just told you like, okay, arts maybe it's just as a hobby, not as a career? Was there ever a point that they said that, or they're just like, yeah, go do whatever you want, go pursue
Yeah,
the arts?
yeah, no. I put the courses that I applied for. Didn't really consult with them. Uh, but I put management and then accounting in LaSalle, and then UP was, I think, also something business.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah, and they were surprised and thought, oh, I thought you were gonna take up art.
Oh, it's the other way around.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
cool.
yeah. It's the other way around.
Nakatuwa. Yeah,
Yeah,
nakatuwa.
nakakatuwa, yeah.
I mean, okay. So you came into Ateneo, diba? You get into management of all courses. And did you have this idea or this impression of what the Manila Chinoys were like? And when you got there, how similar or how different was that idea with what you actually saw and who you actually met?
Mga elitista, dude.
No, sige, let's get into it. Let's
Pare
get into it.
flaming wings,
Yeah, yeah,
pare.
yeah. So the people I knew growing up, I thought they just were hardworking businessmen. They were friendly. They were pretty much open to each other. Here it was very much like, because I was not from here
Mhm.
and also had different interests, and I wasn't a Xavierian or wasn't too frat boyish. Like
Okay.
I could feel the difference, but also that they were very much some were chill.
How is it different, Rob? Like
It,
you mentioned the frat boy comparison. Can you try to describe that more? Because like
it
I'm from that community, but I want to hear it from someone who's not from that community.
it feels like such a boys gang kind of thing. And then because of the years that they spent together, they already have a tight knit group. So like I
There's a
didn't
clique.
bother trying to get into that, right? Because like I don't know, I'm not interested in the same things. And it was always that kind of, now that they're in college, time to let loose, go wild a little, go after girls, get that kind of thing. And then they would talk about like, oh, you check her out. And then like, here's the thing: I never had a girlfriend till I was 21. I had no idea how to date. There was no dating allowed in my high school. So like the college experience was just like, wow, this is hedonism. Everyone's just. I came from a Christian school. I am currently an atheist. But like, oh wow, everyone's just fucking wow. Everyone's trying to get laid. And like, yeah, it felt very that. They're one-minded pursuits of getting drunk, wasted, being boys club stuff, and yeah, very much keeping within like the pure bloodline, like keeping with the Chinese and the Chinese. That's how I felt. So like, I would still get that weird thing where I would go to places and then like where Chinese don't usually show up, like gigs or art events around the school, that kind of thing. And then like I would be the only one there. I remember the most Chinese I've been in inside a classroom with was when Celadon, the Chinese org,
Yeah.
were accepting
Yeah.
recruits, and then I was just like, "Hi, I'm also Chinese."
So nagsela doon ka.
Yeah, for the first year, and then like we didn't
Okay.
do anything. All the programs are like celebrating Chinese culture and like management and marketing, and I was just like, What?
Okay, this is what I
What
heard
is?
about Celadon though. Is it
Mm.
true that it's this huge org, kind of like it's a huge Kaisha org,
Like
or
they just
it's a huge
reto
pangreto?
where people just
Re-
reto each other, you know.
What? What's that? What?
Oh,
Reto? Oh,
Uh,
Kaishao. Okay, what is Kaishao? What is
Oh,
okay,
Reto?
Kaisha
okay,
was like
okay,
people
Kaisha.
trying to meet one another for for the purposes of dating. Reto, as in to introduce one another.
Yeah,
Oy, friend ko si Rob. Oh, this is Kim.
It's
You're
for
a guy in a
dating?
so
yeah,
like
that's what I
that's one
heard.
of that's one of those jokes dun sa mga Chinese orgs. So whether
Mhm.
it's
yeah,
CSA in UP, Anglicom
Mhm.
in
Anglicom.
LaSalle, Celadon in Ateneo na people just go there to date. And like admittedly medyo reductive din yung stereotype because some of these orgs actually do stuff. May activities din naman sila.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
the reason why the stereotypes exist is also because marami ring sumasali doon para makahanap ng jowa.
Yeah.
And over the years, marami ring mga mag-asawa na yung love story nila doon din nagsimula sa mga org na yun. So like for you, Rob, did it ever feel like you were part of an org where people were just trying to find like a fellow Chinoy to date?
I went there to the General Assembly just once in my freshman year and never went back. There was nothing else for me there.
Okay.
Yeah, so I have zero idea how Celadon is. But
Okay.
yeah, that
Mhm.
is what the Phil Chai community to me is for the Manila Phil Chai. My experience is cliquish, very much
Right.
everyone's familiar with each other. They kind of stick to the mold that everyone's trying to plan for them for
I
like from
agree.
their parents,
Mhm.
and yeah, I didn't really hang out with any of them, so not sure if there was like some kind of deeper internal struggle there where it's like a frat boy is like, I don't want to drink like this anymore, man, what are we doing here? Like I don't yeah, like I haven't seen that. Maybe there is stories like that, but then I just hung out with the mass comm kids
Yeah.
and the information design
Yeah,
people. Yeah, so I may have taken up management at Ateneo, but then it was just mostly for the degree, and then all my extracurriculars were Ateneo Musicians Pool, Loyola Film
wow.
Circle, um, called I forgot what the head org was, where it's the umbrella for all these different. So yeah, that's my impression of what the Philchai community was. Besides the random like ninang or ninong or tita that you meet at like a mall
Or a
and they
funeral.
start bothering you. Ah
Yeah.
no, like yeah,
So how did it feel though? Kasi sabi mo na, okay, this is my observation of this Chinoy community, but it felt like that wasn't your community. How did that make you feel?
it was all right. Like I knew that probably the Philchai community in Baguio was like that's home, right? As for here, it was like I found my own other communities that I felt more a part of, like the gig scene, going watching live bands, making friends there,
Yeah.
going to different galleries and exhibits, making friends at conventions and cons.
Same.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I don't know if I ever would have found a community to belong to. It was just based on race.
Just curious though, Rob, another curious question for me. Like you took up management in Ateneo. Then
Mhm.
right now you're working as a web designer, an illustrator. So how did it transition from management, then you suddenly got into the arts? What was it like?
As
Like
a
how was the
professional
yeah.
career.
Even though I went to management, like, hey, I'm good at math. What do you know? Yeah, I was tutoring my friends on statistics and stuff, like my batchmates. I mean, but how I transitioned to like having an art career, I was still interested in it. So one big help was my cousin Rodney, Chinoy from here. He would show me around every weekend, but also he would buy me a lot of comics when I was growing up here. I mean, when I was first studying here, he would buy me comics every week. He would give me CDs of scans of comics. So I was always interested in comics, but the only comics I could find in Baguio would like be Archies or really old like secondhand issues. Here in Manila, there's a fully booked, there's a Comic Odyssey, there's a Philbars, there's piracy sites because they showed me how of scans of comics that I couldn't get my hands on. That gave me an education, and like I really wanted to pursue it because comics were such a big interest for me. I got an education in comics, and then I asked my dad if he could buy me a tablet so I could start learning digital art, like a Wacom, and he did. And yeah, and it was me learning from the internet at those days. This was 2006, 2007. And yeah, I download PDFs, Dummy's Guide to Photoshop, how to use Illustrator, just so I can learn how to make comics. I kind of taught myself that. I already had some know-how from my art classes, but yeah, I just kind of started making comics and posting them online. How that transition to a career was okay. So I was doing the thing, and then when I posted them on Tumblr, there was this thing called Tumblrity at the
Yeah.
time.
Hmm.
Depending on how many likes or retweets you get, you start to go up the charts, reblogs. And then like I remember getting up there just because I kept posting comics, and then people picked me up. They featured me in news articles. I got jobs from that. People were asking me to draw their boyfriends or girlfriends. I remember that my thesis was for management. The thesis is you start a business,
Yeah.
and they let me do the graphic design stuff and none of the accounting or running the business. And I was like, let me help. And then they were like, no, we don't have to do this. You did everything that we need. You're good. And then like I didn't do anything else for my thesis. And like I passed. Yay, cool. But yeah, it turns out like that helped me a lot, where knowing how to do these things led to a career. I got out of college, started freelancing with art, illustrating for different magazines like Rogue, Philippine Star, Young Star, uh, Esquire. I think
Cool,
Esquire.
cool.
Yeah. So yeah, then that just I still kept making comics, selling them at cons, and then one thing led to another. Became a web designer because yeah, and I learned design through that. Became an art director, became a freelancer, worked on comics professionally, made a graphic novel. Uh, Storyboard artist, caricature artist. Yeah, it's there on my resume where it's like,
Right.
yeah, I was just like, I can draw. What can I apply this to? Then I tried everything, and right now I'm doing animation, storyboard, comics, and storybooks.
And that is cool.
So cool. It's like everything that we want to do as well. So
Yeah.
it's so nice to hear like there are people like Rob Cham, excelling or being out there. So sobrang nice. I believe said you have a
Oh,
question.
that's just more of like if there are like young aspiring like Chinoy creatives or creatives in general, like who want to get into this field. Are there any tips or advice that you can give them?
It's so different from when I started out. Like right now, so I made a burner account on Twitter, right? I just post random art that I make there, and it doesn't look like anything that I do. And I started following other younger artists, and it's such a different environment from when I grew up and from when we grew up. It's honestly vicious, where like before, just like I know people would look for followers, people would search for that kind of thing. But the thing I noticed from the younger generation is they keep constantly searching. They're treating art as content. So
Okay,
that's
okay,
that's that's horrifying to me, where it's like they're treating it as like, watch out for my next art drop, or guys please like and follow this, or please
yeah,
retweet this. And then it's just this cycle of just the numbers mattering so much. And then I don't know what to do with that, because like I know
uh,
that matters now, because that's how you get eyes, that's how you get clients, that's how you get value.
that's
But like
true.
I'm like it's freaky, because I can't give any advice to that kind of environment.
It's very different from our deviant art days, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
And even then, like deviant art days, like the advice would be just like, they would tell us just post your art and maybe something will happen. And it's like this freaky amount of coincidences need to happen, where like the right person sees it, more people
Yeah,
start to,
yeah.
yeah. And then like I feel like if we're gonna give advice about how to get followers and likes, I am gonna go mad, because like I don't know what to do.
Or
I,
people better just ask like actual influencers because like they probably
Yeah,
know how to game
true.
the system better, diba?
Exactly. Like that's paid followers, that's
Right.
like contests and promos. People do that with their art these days, where it's like art
Mm-mm.
yeah.
giveaway, art drop,
And
and
Yeah.
then
everybody's just trying to be an influencer these days.
yeah, and it's weird. Like I didn't want to be that, and then like I have that status somehow. Like, and I don't really don't really use
I
it.
hear you. I hear you.
Yeah,
Let's take it back
but
to to the documentary because I
mm,
remember this was something that you wanted to touch on before we did the interview.
yeah,
So when we were first talking to each other about getting this podcast episode set up, one of the things you mentioned that stood out to me was na you felt like the questions that were being asked of you put you in this little mold which you
Yeah.
felt you didn't belong in. So do you want to get into that bit? Because at the time that we're recording this, you haven't appeared in the documentary yet.
The trailer he did, but yeah.
Yeah.
Rob's in the
Yeah.
trailer, but like
In the
if this
worst
were-
possible way, where like the trailer makes me look like a coward, right?
Let's get into that because that's your story and then that's your trailer
Mhm.
also. So
Yeah.
I want to hear your take.
All right. So there's a trailer for me, but there's also a trailer where it's for all of us. And then the one I'm having issue with is the trailer for all of us, where my only dialogue there is like, "Oh, I haven't dated Chinese girls because I'm afraid of them." The rest of the context was me explaining that was a joke. They just don't show up where I go, and then like they made it sound like what, like I'm some kind of coward. And then like I remember my friend sending me that link saying, "Ah, you're afraid of Chinese girls," but I'm like, what?
Yeah, and then it
like,
becomes a meme
yeah.
and so that
It
sort
was
of
That's
quite
the only
weird.
soundbite they know
Yeah.
me
It
for.
was weird that they only put
Yeah.
of all the things you said, that was the only thing they put in the trailer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The second issue I have is how they've put me in that box of how even in the interview, like they were asking me, "Did your parents really support your art? Are you a struggling artist? Are you supported by your family?" I'm like, "Yeah, I am. Like they love me."
Okay, so this is funny to me because that
yeah.
line of questioning follows the stereotype na, oh, you're an artist and you're Chinoy, so your parents probably had a lot of issues with it.
Yeah.
Exactly. And then like even in the documentary that they put out, like they made me sound like my parents disapproved when what I said in that interview was
Mhm.
they asked, "How did your parents feel about this?" And I said, "I guess just how any family here feels about art. Like it's not inherently unique to Filipino art, I mean to Chinese artists. Like
Yes.
every family here has apprehensions if a kid wants to go into art. Doesn't
Yeah.
matter where you're from. Art is scary because like the old people don't understand it."
That's true.
That's it.
No,
But yeah, that's what I want to touch upon. Where that's it. Like because I make art and I happen to be Chinese, I'm put into a box that oh he must be disowned or his parents must not approve
Or you must be
or
this revolutionary.
I'm yeah. I'm not sure. Okay, what's the revolutionary part about? I don't know how that's revolutionary. I don't know.
Revolutionary in the sense that parang, oh yeah, you're bucking the trend. You're not managing a hardware
Hmm.
store. You're not
You're taking the
running
road
the
less
family
traveled,
business.
things
Oh,
like
but
that.
in a way, medyo na romanticize na rin siya, diba?
Yeah.
Given our generation is more likely to like go do our own thing. So
Mm.
let me ask you this then. When Chinoy TV approached you to do the documentary, how did that make you feel? Given you never really felt a sort of kinship to the local Chinoy community.
I remember how I was joking about this like years ago. Like I tweeted it out where it's like, I know when will Chinoy TV notice me? It was just a joke because I know how niche Chinoy TV is.
Yeah.
It just
Yeah.
shows up on like TV sometimes, and then like, okay, they only talk about people who do business or just feng shui, like Chinoy TV concerns, and like I thought it'd be neat. Like, okay, I'm Chinese, I'm part of the Chinoy community. It'd be nice if I was featured one day. That's the extent of the tweet, where it's like I haven't seen Chinoy TV in a while. Maybe I accomplished enough to be noticed. It'd be nice. Yeah.
That's
But yeah, when they emailed me, how I felt was I gotta look for that tweet, man. And I was telling all my friends about it, like, guys, Chinoy TV finally noticed me. So I was excited at first, and then it started to be like, "Hey, go to the shoot date, do the thing." And then when they send the questions ahead of time, that's when I kind of like, oh no, they're painting me as.
Yeah.
But did you
rebel.
try to like ask them na, okay, actually ito yung life story ko, so maybe steer the questions in this line of this line of logic or this thought process or whatever? Because like I also asked for the questions when I got them, and I told them specifically like this is what I want to talk about.
Mhm.
Yeah. On the surface level, kasi that's what you expect when like you hear, "Hey, Rob Cham, what's his story? He must be
Yeah.
from Savior." Fucking hell. I always get that. Or yeah, and my parents might disapprove. And then like I'm really like outside of the Chinese community, honestly.
Right.
Yeah. So I did bring it up when we started talking on the set, and they kind of were asking about it, kind of like tailor the questions a little better for me during the interview. And that's when they kind of like started picking up on like different things to kind of use for the documentary. So yeah, at least that worked out. But I guess what you're talking about is like how there's always that thing where we always have to fight that stereotype no matter where we are at as a Chinese community, right?
Yeah.
Where they expect you to be a business owner, they expect you to be
Right.
an asshole, they expect you to be
Or they expect you to be like the model minority na hindi ka gagawa ng gulo, or like if there's anything political, you shut up about it. And like, you know, a quick Twitter search of Rob Cham, you've got some political thoughts out there as well.
Yeah.
That's the thing I also noticed, because like there's that whole thing about harmonious stuff and then people just going along.
Right.
Yeah, and it's
Kasi nga
like,
ayaw ng gulo. Like
Yeah.
that's the stereotype, and to a very large extent, totoo siya. Diba?
yeah, the model minority.
Right, right.
Yeah, I'd rather, you know, just like stand for like something than, because I feel like the model minority would be someone who actually wants to participate in the country they are in.
Yeah. So on that note, I wanna bring up something that you observed as you did watch the documentary. So episode 2 comes out, and I wanna enjoy ko siya because it was a nice look at the history of citizenship for our community. Diba? Na for the longest time, the older generations were considered aliens, so they didn't get citizenship until 1975 during martial law. So I know you had some insights on this, Rob, and do you want to like talk through them just so you know we could like process it together, I guess?
Yeah. So one, when I saw that, I realized, oh, that's why my dad was a Marcos supporter. Because he was born here and wasn't recognized until as a citizen until he
Right.
was 20 something.
Right.
So the documentary gives details where we were second class non-citizens.
Yes.
We were only allowed in this country if you were running a business, and your children were only allowed if, that's it, you could prove that you're running a business here. So it was always that tense situation where these people are trying to make a living, and they could get deported anytime if they lose their businesses, or they could lose their families, and then they
Kaya
could
rin
lose their
siguro yung stereotype
livelihoods.
is Chinese ka, may business ka. Kasi that was the only thing that they could do at the time.
Yeah, you couldn't be a doctor, an artist, an engineer, a dentist. You couldn't hold any of these other jobs. That's what the documentary talked about. Like Teresita was talking about.
Angsi,
right?
yeah.
Yeah, and I didn't know that, and that explains so much of why, for me, like extrapolating, this might not be the case. This might not be the reason, but so many people have businesses. They try to pass it on to their children. They work hard for it. That's one narrative. Another narrative is so that you can stay in this country. And then as soon as it opened up for us, it must have meant that their daughters and sons could do more than just business, and then they push them towards that, where now it's like we have more doctors, more lawyers, variety of different Chinese people in different interests, Chinoy people, right? So I guess that's why like my dad decided to go into banking, because he could, because after graduating, like he was a citizen, he doesn't have to go run my grandpa's business, and yeah, he could just do what he was interested in, find pursuits elsewhere, opportunities. And I guess that's why like they were also supportive of me, like let him go where he wants towards art, because they know what it's like to be denied the opportunity to be what kind of person you are.
Right. That's an interesting insight, especially when you frame it dun nga sa context na hindi sila citizens, therefore their options were different, right? I want to go back to another thing you mentioned na you realize that the timing of the older generation getting citizenship is one of the reasons why a lot of them tend to support like Marcos or have fond memories of that time, diba? We mentioned this in an earlier episode of the podcast din. That's kind of the reason why a lot of the Chinoy community associates Marcos with Duterte, and you know they're generally okay with this administration because of it, because of that association. Na idol ni si Marcos. Oh, Marcos is the one who gave us citizenship and all that, diba? It's I don't know if you identify with this, but like putting these dots together gives you this little mind blown eureka moment, which doesn't justify everything, but it just helps you understand things a little bit better.
Yeah. I still hate Marcos. Oh my god.
Yeah, these are things that people don't, I guess, realize agad, right? Even the whole kidnapping thing. I'm not sure if you guys have seen that section about the kidnapping thing. that being a stereotype associated with us. Diba, Kim, you mentioned a few episodes ago how in Ika, for example, it was a regular talking point for you growing up because you had batchmates and classmates who were, disappearing and shit.
Yeah, definitely. It
Mm.
was a big thing for us, and my family was actually really worried back then. But going back to like what Rob said about Marcos, I feel like we're in the same situation. My parents would also say that whenever I asked them, like, okay, what do you think about the Marcos administration? What was it like back then? And every time I just get comments like, oh, back in Marcos's time, it was great. It was actually one of the best. I mean, I wasn't there to experience it, but that was always their
Narrative.
opinion about it. Yeah, their narrative about it. And whenever I ask them about the current administration, they're always they're not so sure, but at the same time, parang okay sila. At the
Because they
same
want
time,
to keep low
yeah, they want to
key.
keep low key. They want
Yeah.
to maintain the status quo and things like that.
I remember my parents also saying the same thing, but I would just respond back to that
Mhm.
like, hey, Adolf Hitler also built the Autobahn, right? But we don't hear Germany saying, we should be thankful for Hitler for building the Autobahn, despite the abuses that he's done. So that's the same thing I would tell my parents now. Yeah, you can have the good and the bad, but that doesn't justify, that person as being a good leader. So
Mhm.
it's just something that I would want to say to our readers as well.
Yeah, I don't know, man. Like when people are dying left and right, I think that
Yeah,
really constitutes the best of times.
exactly.
Totally. We're ending this episode on such a dark note, but
Yeah.
no. The point here is that well, I guess I wanted to talk about it because it's really interesting than the things that we I guess are learning about ourselves. The documentary for all the good and not so good. At least sa akin, may natututunan pa rin ako kahit paano, which is why I'm really happy that we got to be a part of it. Na you and I, Rob, started becoming friends because of it. Now we get to talk about ourselves, our culture, our community, and I just wish na uh people talked more, I guess, about these things. We can probably spend another hour talking about how generally the local Chinese community feels superior compared to everybody else. Like that's another
Yeah.
can of worms, diba, that
Mhm.
we would probably
Difficult
spend. So,
conversations.
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I
So
felt very much like lesser than them just because I couldn't speak. I wasn't into the same things.
I can
you,
relate.
you
I
want to
can.
get into that a little bit, like yung that feeling of being lesser na parang yeah, you identify as Chinoy, you look Chinese, you look like everybody else, but how would they make you feel like you were lesser?
I was doing this pop-up graffiti thing at I think it was BGC, and then old Chinese couple just walks by and then notice, Chinese ka? And then they start talking to me in Fukien.
Yeah.
And I say I don't speak it. And then they suddenly like lost all interest. And then they just started still trying to make small talk. Why didn't you learn? Were you, like all these other like possible explanations of why I couldn't speak it. And then like as in like I felt the respect going down and down and down just because I wasn't what they thought to be a good Chinese boy. Like, oh, he's doing art. That's interesting. It must be his business or something. I guess that's what they thought.
Right.
But then it turns out like, oh, okay, I got contracted by this company to do this mural, and then I don't really speak Chinese. I'm sorry. I grew up in Baguio, and then like it just kept going down and down. That I'm not from Savior. That I don't own a business, or that I didn't grow up in Manila, or that's it. Like they even gave me advice na parang, find a good Chinese girl, huh? Yeah. It's
What?
like that didn't have anything to do with what we're
Yeah.
talking about. And
I
then
can relate.
learn
It's pretty
Chinese,
fucked up.
huh?
It's
Yeah,
pretty
yeah.
fucked up when you think about it, because
Yeah.
it's them getting on their high horse and
Yeah.
trying to exercise some sort of superiority over you just because of their perceived values, which they
Yep.
felt were better than yours, supposedly.
We have similar experiences as well, Rob, because I cannot speak proper Hokkien as well.
Hmm.
And I remember it was one of our comic conventions
Yeah.
where I was manning the booth for So Asian Comics.
Mhm.
And I remember this boomer Chinoy dad would come over and ask about So Asian Comics. And then when he found out that I couldn't respond back to his inquiries in Hokkien, he got really mad. And he told me that I had no right to be the author of So Asian Comics.
Oh no,
Or
he
that we
started
didn't respect
dissing.
anything,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like,
Sobrang
I had
like
no business.
dissing
Like,
everything
wow.
else. So that was crazy.
So I'm like,
Yeah.
wow, get off your high horse, boomer. So yeah.
Yeah, it's like I couldn't learn Chinese because I didn't have anyone to speak it with. And like the application of it is just with other Chinese people. And like,
Yeah, I totally understand. Especially being the arts industry, you don't really get to interact with a lot of Chinoys anyway.
Yeah, isa pa yun,
Yeah.
diba? Like if you say if Rob had gotten into banking the same way na your dad did, the chances that you'd be talking to Chinese people in Hokkien are, way higher, diba? But because you're an artist and because there just aren't a lot of Chinese people in art, same with me, diba? With hosting and with entertainment. Di naman marami yung mga Chinese na nandun eh. And even then, the Chinoys who are there probably don't identify as strongly or probably aren't as fluent as say Kim would be, diba? So parang I share the frustration na people get up on their high horse and all that shit, and I think that's wrong. I think it's really unfair. So
doing something more impressive. What the fuck?
we're gonna cap it off here, Muna. We can go on and on about the things that we would probably be complaining about, but I just want to say, Rob, thank you so much for taking time out to just hang out with us and to share a bit of your perspective as a Chinoy who doesn't come from Manila, has a different worldview and impression on the community than us. Because to me, it is refreshing. Now, I don't get to talk to Chinoys who aren't from Manila a whole lot. So thank you for sharing your insights with us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
For our listeners and our viewers who want to get in touch with you or check out your work or even collaborate with you, where can people find you?
You can find me on most of social media, Instagram, Twitter, at Rob Cham. You can check out my work at robcham.com. And yeah, you can search me up on Facebook.
All right.
Just look for Rob Cham with an M, not an N. That's another thing. Everyone keeps spelling it wrong. Everyone's so used to Chan.
Rob Cham.
My name is already like freaking unique. The M is wider for a reason. I don't know why everyone keeps misreading it as an N.
They're like, it's probably a typo, so I'll just go with Chan. The more popular surname.
Angry Chinese uncle is natural to you, Rob. Like one of these days, you're gonna settle into your role as angry Chinese uncle.
Yeah, just look at my Twitter. It's mostly angry Chinese uncle rants, man.
Yeah, eventually you're just gonna settle in there comfortably. I can feel it already. As for us, though, you can hit us up as well and share your thoughts, your comments, your questions. Even you can hit us up at nowsteamingpod@gmail.com. We do open the mailbag for anybody who wants to send in your questions and comments and whatnot. You can also hit us up on Facebook and Instagram at Now Steaming Podcast. On Twitter, it is at Now Steaming Pod. Let's go to Ced. Where can people check out your work and if they want to get in touch with you?
Oh, you can just message me on Instagram, Cedric C. Cheng, or you can just message the page mismo of So Asian Comics or Now Steaming because I'm the one who's handling the inbox. How about you, Kim?
Right, nice. You said your social media manager. As for me, guys, you can follow me on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. I also have a personal website that's www.kimberlymas.com. You can contact me there. You can also check out my bio on all the other things that I do.
Oh, shout out to sa guys na nag-add lagi kay Kim. Like, send her a message first before you send a friend
Yeah,
request.
please. Yeah,
horn
to
dogs.
all of the people
got-
asking me or like adding me on Facebook, please just send me a message or like send me a DM if you want to collaborate. That would be really nice. Okay,
Kim
compared to
gets
just
5
adding me
requests
and I'm
every
like,
day.
what do you want from me? Like, do you want to collab or stuff? It's really
They want to
weird.
send
like,
you a CV.
Hirap magisikat, shit.
please, no, seriously.
Haba ng
no.
hair eh.
De. Yeah, but let's go with Stan though. Stan, where can they find you?
Yeah, you can find my voiceover work, hosting stuff, wrestling stuff over at _Stansy. That's _STANSY on Twitter and Instagram. And yeah, just hit us up with whatever comments. And we'd love to keep the conversation going here on Now Steaming. So we're going to end this episode here for now. Thanks again to Rob Cham. Thank you to my co-hosts, as always, Ced and Kim, for being part of this project. We're going to come back next week with our season finale. And we're going to close out the season with a bang. Hopefully, you're going to be there as well. And please follow the podcast, subscribe, share, let people know that we exist and that we keep talking about these borderline uncomfortable things that your parents probably don't want you to talk about. And please stay at home if you can. Stay safe, stay healthy, wear a mask. And if you can, go get vaccinated. And remember to vote in 2022 because we need a different kind of change. All right? Now Steaming Podcast out.